Hello, everybody. This is Insomniac by Choice. Thanks for clicking on this and joining us today. We're going to be talking about human cloning. It's going to be cool. Let's get into it. You are listening to the Insomniac by Choice podcast.
In this video, I'm about to break down human cloning and a step-by-step process on how it's done. Now, if I want to clone you, I'm going to get a female that got the same blood type as you. Why do I need a female with the same blood type as you? Simple. It's because a female is the only human capable of having a baby. After I get a female with the same blood type as you, I get a glass pipe as thin as one strand of hair. Now, why do I use a glass pipe? The same reason you should drink your water out of glass, because you can't taint the germs, aka the genes. Remember, germs mean genes. Now, why do I get a glass pipe as thin as one strand of hair? Simple, because it's thin enough to penetrate those germs, aka those genes. Now, once they get those two blood types in the glass pipe thin as one strand of hair, they fuse those two blood types with a process called ultramagnetic shock, which forms a fetus. See, back in the day, when they did human cloning, they used to take up to the full lifespan of the entity that they were cloning. But now in this day and age, you got technology that can clone anybody up to 6 months. So if they got a 40-year-old man, it'll take 6 months to clone him. See, now they have a process called mind uploading. Say they wanted to clone me, and the last thing on my mind before they clone me was a bag of Doritos. In 6 months, once they get my clone and wake it up, the bag of Doritos will be on that clone's mind. They used to have to physically take your blood. Well, now they use robots. And when you think of a robot, you think of a metallic substance. But nowadays, with technology, that's not the case. They have biological entities. They look like mosquitoes. They come, bite you, get your blood, get your DNA, and they take it back to the cloning base. They got an underground bunker cloning base in New Mexico called Dose Cloning Facility. If you think cloning is not real, you better second guess and go do your homework on human cloning. Your favorite rapper might be a clone. Put that on your brain.
All right. What's going on, everybody? This is Insomniac by Choice. That right there was a video that's been circulating on TikTok. It was sent to me by my son, who you guys are going to get to meet. He's awesome. He's into all this stuff. He's 19, he's 19. Anyway, he sent me this clip because he wanted to know what I thought about it. And I thought it was pretty interesting. The guy talking in the video looks like he's like a security guard or something like that. And he's just talking into his phone. It's pretty interesting. But cloning, this is something that we've all heard, obviously, of. It falls into the category of those types of subjects that deep down we probably think or feel like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it, excuse me, if it really did exist. And kind of like, the whole alien subject. And there's a lot of things that fall into that category. But so what I wanted to talk about, not just human cloning, but this video in particular, this guy's actually making a really good point. And what he's talking about, I want to say a couple things about it. The first thing that he talks about, the science side of it, where he talks about the glass tube as thin as a human hair. You can go look all this stuff up. Like he says, this stuff exists. We also know that they can grow cells in a petri dish, and it's just a lump of flesh, right? That's what they kind of use as a sidebar argument for abortion, the fetus / baby argument. And they're like, look, it's just a lump of flesh. And they're right, it is. because it contains no DNA source code that makes it a human being created by God or whatever. And so it falls into this funny little category, going back to the subject that we were talking about, the aliens or demons. And we'll get into, I'll show you how that all ties in with what this guy was saying. But back to the science stuff. We've all known that the Petri dish thing with the flesh in it exists. And we also know they have the capability to read and write code for DNA. And they've figured it out. Hence all the news releases and white papers around the CRISPR company from China, who outright admitted, and proudly so, that they have cracked the DNA code. Anyway, it's funny, both of these things exist, and theoretically, when you put them together, you have everything you need to make a clone. A human being or a lump of flesh that has DNA source code that's going to grow a certain way. Again, in this scenario, this is not a sanctioned creation in God's eyes. So it's not going to go good. And we're going to do a longer episode around this. And I'm going to have a couple guests on, and we're going to get much deeper into it. But this is a much shorter one, and I just want to talk about this little video. But getting back to it, how he talks about the science stuff, like I said, all that exists, but nowhere in the mainstream are those two things being put together to you, like being presented to you together, but rather separately. But at the same time, they're telling you the truth, because if those two technologies exist, there's nothing stopping them from being able to do it. So that's their plausible deniability when they get caught for doing it. Anyway, the next part is he mentions a delivery system of these biological entities, or little biological robots, I guess. Really, I mean, there's no other way to really describe it, I guess, that it would resemble a mosquito. You wouldn't really be able to tell the difference. You would if you were studying it, but probably in passing, you would just see it as a bug or a mosquito. Those things do exist. Google DARPA. Google DARPA and how far they've taken the drone technology. So that's what I mean. They have all these basic things. We have all these corporations giving out this technology. If anything, like I said before, exists in the corporate world, you can guarantee that foundational and fundamental technology has been taken down a nefarious path that you know nothing about, and has for a long time, because these military industrial complex patents that are attained, they run out, and when they do, they get sold into the private sector. Anyway, this stuff exists, so he's not capping. You move on to the third part, where he talks about the Dulce underground facility. And this is where dude is going to lose some people. And I say that because I'm already aware of what Dulce underground facility is. Google Phil Schneider. Anyway, there's plenty of information on it. The problem with all the information that's out there on it is that none of it is verifiable. It's all third-party hearsay, drawings, sketches from memory, based on a story that somebody told somebody. Like somebody who knew somebody told a dude a story about a place, and he did a sketch, and then that's the sketch, that type of stuff. But it's been in the conspiratorial realm for very long. It's not a new subject, and if you're aware of it, you would also know how much stigma is around it. That for somebody who, say, is trying to learn about these things and isn't familiar with how all of this works, and they Google the first part of what he's talking about, and they're like, wow, that technology does exist. And then they Google the next part, they go to DARPA and they look into the drone technology and the delivery system of the mosquito thing he's talking about, and they'll be like, wow, that exists too. And then they're, on the edge. And then they go Google Dolce. And that's where they're going to hit, and reasonably so, they're going to hit a wall. They're going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Because there's a lot of BS around it. And a lot of fantastic stories surrounding that place. And there's no proof that it even exists. Now, would I be surprised if it did? Nope, I would not. I tend to be more along the line of thinking that the myth of Dolce is very similar to the myth of Area 51. It's used as kind of a scapegoat, a red herring of some sort, when everything else is going on at other places like S4. If you are familiar with Bob Lazar, he says that Area 51 is really just a decoy. So a place like Dolce itself, the one that is spoke about like legend, does that actual place exist? I don't know. But I guarantee you there's a place like it that does exist somewhere. There's several locations. The Mesa Verde, it's another one. There's several locations that people claim there are these underground locations where they house not only cloning facilities. That was the other part I wanted to bring back about how the aliens are demons thing. The Dolce legend has more to do with aliens and alien-human hybrids and experimentation. The DNA is just a part of that. If you look into the story of it, you'll see that there's said to be different floors, and each floor is exclusive from the others. Everybody has certain levels. Only certain people can go all the way to the bottom. And apparently only certain creatures that are kept only at the bottom can only go so far up to the top. But all kind of stuff like that. So the DNA part of it, or the cloning aspect to it, would be like an office in this place. An office of, this whole place is not strictly built for cloning type thing. That just goes on there. So with that being said, it's claimed that there's all kind of extraterrestrial entities that are kept here that are tasked with helping the humans back engineer the technology that has been planted here by these creatures. And so the word is that they are kept in the deeper floors, the deeper sections of the Dolce facility. And I find it interesting that that's where they're claiming that a lot of the cloning is coming from, which, like I said, these creatures are not aliens. They're unclean spirits left behind from the dead Nephilim and other entities that were created before the flood from the book of Genesis. And they need a fleshly vessel to interact here. Excuse me. So I find it interesting that all the cloning that they're claiming is like new or whatever, that it would come from there. It's not new. And that brings me to a movie suggestion for you guys. It's a fairly older flick, and it's called The Boys from Brazil. It has to do with cloning, and it will open your eyes as far as how long this subject has been a reality as far as science. This movie, in a lot of ways, is a documentary. It's a based on story, but like I said, it's a lot older, but it's a really good movie. And yeah, if you want to have your mind blown, go check it out. So, speaking of having your mind blown and checking stuff out, there's a lot of things you can do that make this topic even a lot more fun, because it's, it is fun. It's interesting. It's way more interesting than any show that's on Netflix right now. I can promise you that. So let's talk about Eminem, Slim Shady, right? We've all heard, I don't know if you guys have, we've all heard all these celebrities, right? That's where we hear it the most. Oh, this celebrity goes away. They hit a rehab. They go they're in the hospital or something happens, they disappear for a little while and then they come back. And there's always this percentage of people that swear up and down that these are clones of the original versions. And it kind of roughly parallels some Mandela effect type things as well, because of what people remember about certain celebrities being not true. But I think that because of this, it's more based on the cloning aspect. So check this out. Eminem, Slim Shady, right? When I was a senior in high school, Hi, My Name Is went to #1 on the radio. That's when he came out. And he was known for having bright blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Okay? He's super famous for a few years. Fast forward, a bunch of stuff happens to him. There's a rumor that he actually died of a drug overdose. And he actually names his albums after all this. I'm just telling you, go look into it. If you like rabbit holes, this is a fun one. I specifically remember Eminem having blue eyes and blonde hair. And so I definitely went down a rabbit hole with this one. And now he doesn't. He has brown hair and brown eyes, dark brown eyes. Now, of course, the hair is obviously explainable. You know, you can dye hair. And so are contacts, like available for eyes. But these aren't contacts. And why would somebody do that? For no reason. But yeah, check out Eminem, Slim Shady, a clone. Another one that's a fun one to look into, and I'm going to share a link in the description for you guys to check out, because I actually was listening to it earlier today. There's a story about Dave Chapelle, who also was from that time period in my life when I was much younger. The older listeners may know he had a show called The Chapelle Show, and it literally broke all the boundaries down for television as far as censorship, and it broke barriers for comedy, race relations, everything. That was the best time to be in a room full of everybody being a different race. Everybody got along and we all had fun and we all laughed our butts off at each other, because that's what life is. And Dave Chapelle was celebrated in the country at that time because he represented that aspect of society, which was a realistic aspect. Like even today, you walk outside, everybody gets along. For the most part, we get along. It's nothing like the news, right? Anyway, so back at that time, it was great, man. If you were a Dave Chapelle fan, you could be anywhere in the world and you could yell, "I'm Rick James," and somebody else would yell the B word back at you. You either know what I'm talking about or you don't. But that's how super famous this guy was. He was like, literally, nobody knew his name. He was in a couple movies and shows, and then bam, he had the Chappelle Show. And in a couple of weeks' time, he became undoubtedly one of the most recognized household names in celebritydom at the time. But we also know that he had that time period where he disappeared, and we all know the story that we've been told. So if you look into that one, he apparently has a cousin that was very close to him that did an interview where she masks her voice is masked, so clearly she's not trying to be recognized or get clout or any of that. Actually, it's quite the opposite. She seems more scared for her life than anything. And she has quite the story to tell. It's like about an hour and 10 minutes long. But everybody I've showed it to, first I tell them about this subject. And of course, I sound like a crazy goof nut. But by the time anybody that I've actually gotten to actually sit down and listen to it, like they end up, their eyes are wide open looking at me like, what? Because it's that compelling. So I'm going to put it in the description for you guys to check it out whenever you want. But yeah, the cloning thing blows my mind, just because if it truly is as possible and as doable as it is, as this gentleman in this TikTok video from the beginning is talking about, then that is terrifying. What was that movie Y'all are probably going to be yelling at me through the screen. I cannot think of it. I couldn't think of it right when we started this, but it was made by the same people that made Get Out, but it was about the clones. Is it called Us? I don't remember, but that's a freaky movie where all the people in the cloning facilities like break out and go to take over the original versions of themselves, and they kill them and try to take their lives because, you know, they're sick of being, spoiler alert, but they're sick of being in the facility or whatever. But the scenes in that movie where they show you like the capability of having an underground facility and how they could be anywhere, all over the country, spread under every city, that's a pretty freaky part of the movie. And that's how these Hollywood films do it a lot of times. They tell you the plain truth right in your face, like through a movie, oftentimes using satire, which is ironic, being what satire actually is. But yeah, man, I'm glad you guys stuck around this long. If you did, then we're friends. Like I telling you before, I'm still working on getting the full podcast episodes up and running. It's a lot of work to put together 7 full episodes with guests and whatnot. Actually, the work is in the editing, so I'm still getting all that going, but I just want to keep jumping in and posting in with you guys and letting you know what's going on. All these little short videos I'm doing are basically trying to give you guys the idea of what we're going to be really discussing on the more long-form podcasts that are on the way. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Like I said, check out the links in the description and go look into Eminem clone and Dave Chapelle clone, and, you know, do your own research. I'm not going to spoon feed everybody. This podcast is not going to be for people who just woke up yesterday. So, you know, I'm just kind of good letting you guys know like what we're going to be talking about, and I'm pumped. I'm excited. These are the coolest subjects to me that you could ever be talking about. So anyway, thank you so much for sticking around this long if you have, and we'll see you next time. And this has been the Insomniac by Choice podcast.